cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did.
Nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
All right, today on the podcast, I have someone who is literally responsible for this broadcast right now because he built the software that we are recording on. So I've got the CEO of Zencastr, Josh Nielsen, on. Josh, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jim. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. When I saw you were kind of doing a podcast tour, I was like, I want to throw my hat in the ring. I love talking to people that have products or services that I actually use and hearing the journey. But very cool, man. Wait, and where are you based out of?
So I'm based in Salt Lake City, but I'm actually the only team member here. We're a fully remote team. I started the company while I was traveling the world. And so we launched it in New Zealand, grew the team starting from when I was living in Thailand. Now I'm back here, but we've got team members from, North and South America, Europe, all over the place.
That's cool. True digital nomad, and you're still living it up with fully remote. Well done. And for people that don't know, can you give the quick pitch, like what is Zencastr? Anything you can speak to the size and scale of the business, because it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So our initial kind of entry point in the market was, and this is going back several years now. We've been in the market for about 8 years, and back then, well, as you know, most guests or co-hosts of podcasts are remote, like 80+%. It's really hard to find regular or really interesting guests over and over in your hometown to come on your show. So people back then were using predominantly Skype, which obviously now it's mostly Zoom, to do those recordings. But both of those have an inherent problem where they record, at least Skype in that case, they would record you locally and you'd sound fine, but your guest, it would record them after it got compressed and went through the internet. And that, if you had bad internet connection, at best it was really compressed. At worst, it would have dropouts, robotic sounding voices, things like that. And audiences were just flaming their hosts saying, hey, I can't listen to this. I turned it off. I'm unsubscribing. And so it was a real major pain point because you found an audience, which is already hard in podcasting. And then now they're leaving just because of a quality problem. And so that was the first problem that we solved. Made a web-based platform where you can send a link to whoever you want to record with anywhere in the world. It opens them up in a Skype or Zoom or a Google Meet-like interface. But when you hit record, it records them locally on their end, you locally on your end. We mix those together in the cloud after the fact. So you have that really high quality, same room sound. And then that was just the beginning. Now we've gone on to realize that, podcasters have a lot of other problems aside from just getting that high quality recording. That's the starting point. And we need help with distribution, finding their audience, monetization, easy to use editing tools, all of the above and more. And so we've now expanded into being sort of a full service, all-in-one platform to help with all the different podcasting needs, as well as just helping even people who more broadly identify as content marketers, maybe involved in podcasting, maybe not, still need recording tools, want to get their voice out on social, and helping them create, clips with high engagement and viral potential as well.
Yeah, no, it's a very impressive product, and I've tested quite a few, and I'm very happy with it. I told you even beforehand, just because it's reliable and it's high quality. And so you guys have raised around, it looked like I saw 4.6 million had been raised. And I want to we'll get into where you're at and where you're going, but I'd love to even take a step back. Talk to me about Josh before Zencastr, because I think a lot of people listening it's always tough to have that inflection point of it's easy to look at, founders, high growth SaaS company, it's easy. But what were you doing leading up to this? And talk about that transition to jumping into this.
Yeah, this very much did not start off as a startup, like a high growth startup endeavor. It was very much I found out I had a baby on the way. And I had already been kind of steeped in the startup space. I'd worked at some startups, was a contract engineer for some startups. And I'd been working on some projects that were taking too long that were audio based. I was trying to build something for electronic musicians to help them collaborate online. Getting into music is a hard space, but it's where a lot of people start because it's fun. But then I realized I had a baby on the way. I needed a quicker path to revenue. And also I had been hearing some feedback, like, I don't know about this music thing, but podcasters have a problem with their audio and getting files back and forth and things like that. And so I very much started it off not as I'm going to build $1 billion business. It was, I need to, my wife is from New Zealand and she wanted to go back there to have a baby. So I was like, I want, geographic independence, economic independence, and I want to be able to have decision-making autonomy. Be able to, I had been in some projects before where we were pulled in too many different directions about who wanted to do what and where. And so this was sort of the project that I wanted to pull all those things together. And it was very much about creating a great lifestyle rather than becoming a startup. And it wasn't until, found product market fit, found success, got that first, the goal was like 15K in monthly revenue, we hit that like after 2 years of running it. But once we started charging within the first month, we blew past that milestone. And then it was, okay, well, what's next? And at that time, the podcasting space actually just started taking off on its own. I was just lucky to be sort of at the tip of at the front of that wave as it was building. And that was really stuff that was totally outside of, I think we did help kind of foster those communities, but the real thing that drove it was, podcasts like Serial and This American Life, who were just getting like millions of downloads per episode all of a sudden. And then, everybody, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, whoever was like, okay, we need to get into podcasting. There's money, there's ad revenue there, all that sort of a thing. And so that's what happened kind of as we were building building out the product, and that was when we said, okay, maybe it's time to look to the next stage of the company. Maybe we need to raise some money to, take advantage of the lead that we had. We were the first mover to market in this kind of remote recording space for podcasting. And yeah, so I don't encourage people to just jump right into, startups. It's a hectic space, but once you've already got that, the product market fit and have that traction, and, you're in a space that's got big players with lots of money competing with you, then, maybe it's the right choice.
As I look in the rearview mirror to connect the dots, there's 3 things that stand out in that. One is you heard a problem. You're working on something that maybe it's a nice to have or it solves some problems, but it's not the biggest problem. But then you hear these other problems. You're like, all right, let me go where the smoke is over here. There's one. 2, I feel like a lot of times in startups, we don't think through the problem enough. Are we solving the right problem? It's a real problem. And 2, is this something you want to work on for the next 10 plus years where it's a wave that's getting bigger and bigger? So you clearly landed the plane on those first 2. But then the third thing, this idea of lifestyle design or lifestyle business, for whatever reason, it gets a bad rap. I think it's the best thing ever. That's exactly why I jumped in to do my own thing. It's I'd like to be able to wear sweatpants and not have to go in at this time and work from wherever. And you were able to nail all 3 of those. Again, looking backwards, you look like a genius, but it's wow, that's very well done. But what I'm also interested in is how, you see this problem you're going after. How did you get your first 100 users or first 100 paying customers? Because it sounds like it was pretty quick.
It was slow until it wasn't, which is kind of, I think, always there's always that story hidden beneath it all. I actually, because I didn't have any funding and wasn't thinking in that direction at the time, I actually was taking contract jobs where I could work 4 to 6 hours a day. And then I had the rest of that time to work on my personal project. And so I launched Zencastr. I ran it for 18 months, maybe almost 2 years as a free service. Wasn't charging anybody. I had to make a lot of interesting choices with the architecture and how we were dealing with the product to make that feasible. But we were servicing thousands of monthly active customers for $300 or $400 a month in infrastructure costs.
And
And
how
then
did you get those first free users? Was it just like a forum, people have this problem, you put your link and then boom, it happens?
no, actually, what was happening is people were basically assaulting the hosts on Twitter verbally when their quality was bad, and so I had all of these search terms programmed into Twitter search that were um, like Skype fucked my podcast, or sorry guys, Skype messed, and I would, anytime those would ping, I would just reach out and say, hey, we solved that problem, come check it out. And it was such a big pain point, and there was no other solutions really for that at the time, that almost all of them at least signed up and checked it out. And a lot of them signed up and are even still loyal users today. So that got us like 0 to 100 ish. And then I think somebody product hunted it at that point, and that got us from like 100 to 1,000. And then it kind of just organically grew from there, because it's a product you inherently use with other people. So you're always kind of bringing someone that's never heard of it before when you're inviting a guest onto the show.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like it has a built-in viral loop, which is kind of magical, right? Because you're sharing it with people. That's super interesting. One kind of call out there is, what's nice about creating a product that actually solves a problem, it makes the marketing that much easier, because you just go where the pain is, where people have that problem. And when it's going out to an audience, it makes you that much more of the savior or the firefighter running into the burning building to save the day. Because I'm a big fan of like the magic moment and like timing marketing, and good for you for having those triggers and automations set up. That's very cool. So you're getting these free users. It's clearly working. There's traction. You're footing all the server costs and whatnot. You have to flip the switch to paid. Walk us through that, because I feel like there's this meme going around where it's like this influencer that's selling their farts for $500, but then it shows the SaaS founder that's afraid to raise prices from like $7 to $8 a month. Because a lot of times SaaS founders will undervalue what they do. Like, was it easy for you? Like, boom, $150 a month, I got this, or what was the thought process there?
Yeah. I think I always knew I wanted to charge for it at some point. I think I did undervalue, and I was afraid to know. I waited too long to pull that trigger. Also, I was doing it part-time because I was still covering the bills by working for other people. Eventually, I wish I should look back. I don't remember exactly where we were at in the traction phase, but there was at least thousands of people using it. And I just said, hey, I think there's money here. I think people will pay. I'm going to quit my job. I applied for like 3 or 4 credit cards all on the same day, so that they like wouldn't see each other first, and
Nice.
got like, I don't know, 80 grand in credit or something. And then I took like that next like I think it took me maybe 8 months from that point to actually get it all, because it was just a pain to figure out all the billing and all that stuff. And I was, it always takes longer than you hope. And it was all new to me at that time. So just ran up some money on credit cards until I was able to pull the trigger, and kept my fingers crossed. And luckily that paid off, because these were like these weren't low interest rate cards. These were like 25%, whatever. And, luckily in the first month after adding paid plans, I still kept a free plan as well, but we added like, wave recording and some premium features. And in that first month, we went from like 0 to, I don't know, 17K in MRR, something like that. It was a pretty magical moment, and a big sigh of relief as well.
Wow, that takes some conviction to take these credit cards, because did you have such a high like NPS score or like low churn rate where you're like, this is going to work? Because if you look at like investors, SaaS is the holy grail because of great margins, and if it has great retention, sign me up. Like, what's the thought process that on like YOLOing it and doing the credit card game?
I didn't even know what NPS score was at the time. So I read one book called Marketing for Developers, and it was mostly just about how to put together like the metrics tool chain for analysis and stuff. But I just knew that a lot of people were using it. It did solve a big pain point. And I just kind of had faith too, a little bit of like, let's find out, how long, I was like already almost 2 years into it. I was like, how much longer am I going to wait and just see?
Yeah.
Part of the reason I did wait is, this is all built on browser based technology, which has gotten quite mature now. Back then it was very nascent, and it was like, they would make an update that would like just break everything, and you'd have to figure out how to quickly fix it. And so there's always that fear of like the stability of it at the time. But eventually, we got to a point where it felt pretty good, and just kind of, had to YOLO it and see.
Dude, that's amazing. So you get people paying, you're getting like real MRR. And then is this the point you go to fundraise, or walk us through that? Because there's sometimes this fork in the road of like, I bootstrap this, I make it like profitable, I don't grow as fast, but it's like, it's all yours. And you go verse, hey, this is a first mover advantage. I don't want to lose that. I need to raise money so I can really ride this wave. Like, what was the thought process there on like which path to go down, and where are you at today?
Yeah, so we definitely didn't raise it right away out of that. I mean, at that point in time, it was still a one-man team, and I was trying to figure out, I brought on my first employee after we got that month. Actually bought Zencastr.com, which it was $1,000 to buy that domain. And I was like, if I ever make any money, that's the house I'm going to buy first. We decided to not switch that domain. We just redirect it now. But, it wasn't until I'm very much an engineer, not a marketer and growth guy. I'm getting better. But I definitely needed help if I was going to try and go down that path of not only trying to get funding, but successfully getting funding and having a good plan for, how to take that money and run with it. And so I had kept in touch with a buddy of mine from the first startup that I worked at. It was a startup called Mahalo. It was run by Jason Calacanis from LA. And he went on, stayed in LA. I left. LA was too big of a place for me, but he went on and went to startup after startup. He joined a company called Flipagram. They got bought by ByteDance and then rolled up with another company and turned into what became TikTok.
Wow.
And so he had just a lot of experience and sort of on what that process looks like of being in a funded startup and going through acquisition and doing all the product-led growth stuff. And so his name's Adrian Lopez. Me and him decided to join forces. And, I think at that point we were at like 70K MRR, something like that.
Wow.
And then, we scaled that up together a little bit further, and then maybe I don't know. I'm not good with time frames. So we scaled that up to, we were about, I think over $1 million in ARR. And then that's when we decided, hey, let's try and raise. We started kind of filling out the market, and there was interest, but people were still sort of I think they thought Spotify had like already won the podcasting space at that point. They had purchased Anchor. They had $1 billion they were putting into the market, buying up companies. And so there was this idea that Spotify had already like won it, which obviously didn't happen. Sort of majorly, I think he had to apologize to his stakeholders about blowing some of that money in the way that they did. But, but then COVID happened. And then that's when, we saw like, not even just double digit growth, but, 20, 30% in month over month growth for a while because of everybody was at home, bored, trying to start a podcast, had some money in their pocket, thought maybe they'd start their own business, whatever. And so that's when we had a good opportunity to go out there and raise the money at a pretty good valuation and, take that swing. And so it was, was very much, something that evolved over time. It's not like it happened quickly. If I look back on it now, it could have happened a lot faster if I had, had the same goals in mind as I do now and really understood kind of things. But as well, we also had to wait for some of these inflection points. Like the million downloads per episode podcasts start happening, the big investments coming from big companies, the COVID kind of surge and all of that really played into making it possible to do it in a way that was pretty valuable.
Yeah. No, man, that's fascinating. So you raise this money. What's the use of funds, right? Because people listening, obviously, if you raise like from VC, there's big goals that come with that to go 10x. Because with a lot of SaaS companies, it's like, are you product led growth? Are you sales led growth? Is it founder sales led? And it looks like you've done a phenomenal job with being like product led. And you kind of even mentioned before, it's like, oh, we're doing more like marketing for Zencastr, and you're launching marketing tools. Talk to me about your thought process of taking this money and like, where's that going? Is that all to growth? Is that into engineering? And how do you think through that?
We have historically been very into product led growth, from the beginning and then even into the fundraising phase. I think we probably should have been more focused on, or more balanced on the marketing side as well. Now the space has gotten a lot more competition. The core, just like recording piece of it, has gotten more commoditized. And so we've had to figure out, how do we differentiate from a product standpoint? Remote recording itself is not so unique anymore. We've done that by sort of focusing on benefit-based product stuff for podcasters. Like, this is not only the place to like create your recordings, but actually find the success that you're looking for as a podcaster, as well as if you're, just a content marketer, as well as getting better at the marketing side. And I think what we found as we dipped our toes into like paid acquisition is Google will take as much money as you want to dump into their platform for like display ads and stuff like that. And it's actually so expensive oftentimes that it's really hard to get a positive ROI out of that. And, this is me sort of, if you research a lot into this space, you always end up coming across like Gary Vaynerchuk content. And, his big thing is like, don't dump all that money into those platforms. You can market yourself for free on the social media platforms if you know how to do it. And then he'll say something like, all you have to do is post 5 to 10 times a day across 8 different platforms. And I'm like, well, who can do that? Like, who has if you're not Gary Vee and don't have somebody following you around all day with a camera. And that's where we've had a big focus recently is, podcasters need this. They don't typically have money, especially when they're small, to dump into paid acquisition. So how do we help them as well as help ourselves figure out how to play into the algorithms of these social media channels, utilize that as essentially free marketing outside of your time, and find your audiences there. And this is why we've recently launched our clipping initiative, where we use our AI to scan the content that you're creating. And we even have an option to interview you and help you create the content, and then create, from each recording session, 20, 30 clips that we then schedule out over the month to post all your social media channels. And if you do this 3-4 times a month, you've got content multiple times a day going out across all the different channels automatically. And it costs you, an hour a month, or, maybe 4 hours a month if you really want to kick it into high gear, and it's really batched and you don't have to deal with it every day. So this is something that we're really excited about. Our creators are really excited about. We found that most podcasters, in a recent market report, the biggest reason for churn reported by the creators themselves was the pressure to post their content on all these different platforms. You can't just release a podcast episode on RSS. You've got to get it everywhere. Find your audience wherever they're at if you're trying to really achieve your growth goals. And doing the podcast is already hard. Finding the guests and doing the research, and then having to do, full-time marketing on top of that is just really prohibitive for a lot of people. And so that's the problem that we felt like we could really solve with that product. And not just podcasters need it. This is something that we're using internally. And after this call, I'm going to talk to you about seeing how we can clip up this show and get it broadcast out. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think it makes a lot of sense. I know we're running up on time. I've got 2 more questions for you. And by the way, I do love the also creator network that you have. I use ConvertKit for my email platform, and they've been helping us monetize our email list, which is super exciting. And you guys, and I've been like begging, I like want this for the podcast, and you guys are offering, and I think that's amazing. It makes your product that much stickier, right? Because your retention has to be amazing. So 2 questions for you. One, let's talk podcasts. If you were starting a podcast today, what advice would you give to people? And this is very selfish for myself, on like how to make a successful podcast, and you can go whatever direction you want this. It's like how to make amazing content, different format structures, how to like manage it, scale it, grow it. Like, what quick advice would you give to people listening that want to get into podcasting?
It's hard to give a single answer because people come into podcasting with so many different goals. Sometimes just love of the game. Sometimes it's they've got a, more and more often, I think it's people that are trying to content market and fill up some sort of funnel with leads. And in that case, one thing that I've found to be really interesting is, podcasting is a great starting point, if you think about it that way, to create that long form content that then you can use to create ad content out of, clips and social media content out of. But also it's a great lead funnel or a great way to funnel leads by just whoever your clients are that you're trying to attract, invite them to your podcast. Now you've got a totally different relationship than I'm just trying to sell you something. It's like you've acknowledged their value as a thought leader in the space. Now you have a face-to-face relationship with them, and it's a much easier, better way to kind of make that contact with the people you're trying to sell to. So I guess thinking of it in that way would be some of the advice. Also, I would say don't get too hung up on, there's a lot of fear that keeps people from either getting started or continuing, because I don't know what my theme should be. I don't know like who's the audience, this and that. And, I recently did an interview with Seth Godin, and he had this book called The Practice. And he said like key to success is not, one of the analogies he wrote was nobody learns how to ride a bike without falling. And so if you're deathly afraid of falling, you're just not going to learn how to ride a bike. You have to lean into that fear and just realize that, the first few attempts, you're probably going to whiff it. Just like with business, I was building a totally different startup for a totally different audience that didn't work out, but then eventually led me to pick up on the thread to start working with podcasters. And so it's so much more about getting out there and trying things than figuring out how to get it perfect out of the gate. Just don't be afraid to fail, and that's what's going to lead to the success.
That's such good advice. I literally oscillated for like 18 months on like what the theme should be, the title. I was like, this is so dumb. Just start, right? And it'll be fine. And your first 10 episodes will be so cringe you hate them, but you will get better and better and better. And last question I like to ask everybody is, what's the nicest thing anyone's done for you in your professional career? It could be like tough love someone gave you, or just something that was really helpful as you're trying to like figure stuff out.
The nicest thing. Interesting. I've never been asked that question before. What comes to mind is, you've got investors and advisors that get involved in your company as you grow. And some of them, it's like pulling teeth to even get a response from. And some of them reach out regularly and will just say, hey, what are the bottlenecks? Where can I help? Let's dig in. I'm happy to like let's get on a call whenever you've got time. Let's whiteboard, whatever it is. And, I don't know if it's like kindness or niceness, but that's something that's really appreciated, is the people that are proactive about getting in and just helping out and trying to figure out where your problems are rather than being sort of reactionary. And so those are more rare than you'd think, but are really, really highly valuable.
That's really good advice. You're inspiring me. I do some like mentoring through Techstars. Like, crap, I need to be more proactive and reach out to people. So thank you for that. Well, very cool. Well, Josh, where should we point people if they want to learn more about you or Zencastr? What's the best path?
Yeah. So we've got Zencastr.com as our product aimed particularly at podcasters. We also recently launched Zen.ai, which is our recording and clipping product for if you're just a general content marketer looking to get your voice out on social and aren't necessarily ready to commit to creating a podcast, or not, at least not yet. And then, that's, basically the two places that we're, you can come and find out what we're doing. We've also got our blog, and, we have our at Zencastr is our Twitter. I'm at Josh on Twitter. Or on X. I'm at Josh on the web on X, although I'm not as active as I used to be. We get a lot of just customer support going on there, but I do see the DMs and things, so feel free to reach out.
Cool. I'm on Zen AI. This is pretty slick, man. So yeah, you might have a new customer in me. I get a free trial, no credit card required. I like it. Well, cool, man. Well, thank you so much, man. It's fun to talk with you after using the product for so long, but really appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jim. Happy to do it. Let's let's do it again anytime.